All right, YouTube. I know most of you probably didn't watch the Democratic debate. I did, so here's my response to it. Nothing changed within the Democratic field. Bernie Sanders, as in all prior debates, was generally favored over Hillary Clinton. And I mean, it does translate perhaps into a little bit more support. The big problem for Sanders going into Super Tuesday, he's going to win New Hampshire almost certainly. We know that now. He's contending for Iowa. He's neck and neck with Clinton, actually. They're very close together. He's got a possibility of winning it. Uh, I'm going to operate from the assumption that Clinton will hold on to it. I mean, it's going to be a narrow victory that won't really give her a bump, but she'll probably take this, 51% of the vote. She's going to heavily win South Carolina. What do we know about the states going into Super Tuesday? A lot of them are evangelical upper Midwest states, sort of heartland states, like Dakota. I believe Wyoming is one of them. May be wrong there. I know Arkansas is. And a lot of the others are in the deep south. Where does Hillary have the majority of her support? The same regions. Sanders would probably grab Colorado because of weed. Clinton has largely fucked herself when it comes to drugs. Because while at the debate she talks a big game about, oh, well, we should treat it, addiction should be treated as, illness, not crime, which is something she took straight out of Sanders. She said before she wasn't into the idea of legalization. She said, oh, well, we'll see, I'll see what we'll do. Sort of waffling around. I can't honestly see Sanders. I mean, he's going to win New Hampshire. He'll grab up Vermont, obviously. Colorado, maybe Nevada. There's the possibility he'll win Iowa. But I think that it's going to become more and more certain after Super Tuesday that Clinton will end up being the nominee. This doesn't mean I think she'll win in a general election. I see her as one of the most weak candidates in modern history, certainly since Jimmy Carter. I'll tell you why, too. Her speeches that she's making after her stroke, which we all know that she had, she wears the corrective glasses, she had a stroke. It didn't debilitate her. You could tell, especially during the first half of the debate last night, she has some sort of trauma that happened to her brain. The way that she speaks with a slight jolting aspect to it belies the nature of the neurological injury that she sustained. Probably a mild stroke, but certainly she does have some problems going on. Her speaking skills are not as sharp as they were when she was running against Obama. What's her other weakness? She has cast herself as strong, empowered woman trying to get females to vote for her. What does this take away from her campaign? Bubba. Bill is, of course, getting older as well. His speaking skills are not like they were when Obama ran for re-election, 3 years ago. He was much more polished at that point. He's beginning to lose steam now. He's not the young Bubba that people remember from the 90s. If she begins, though, anyway, to drag him out, because, I mean, he's still relatively popular, especially in the Deep South. Dragging Bubba out to go do everything that she wants to do in the Dixie states will net her every single state down there. From Arkansas to Florida, she'd sweep it all. Not that she's going to face much opposition from Sanders or O'Malley there anyway, if she really wanted to get out the vote. Because she has cast herself as the empowered woman, the strong female who, Secretary of State, First Lady, Senator, don't need no fucking man. If she then drags Bubba out to take the limelight, if he speaks really effectively and people start talking about Bubba, it sort of destroys the illusion that she's the candidate of the vagina, which is what she is branding herself as when she speaks with females. She's released ads because we're on the same broadcast as New Hampshire and part of northern New York. Because of New Hampshire being bundled in with Vermont for cable purposes, we see all the fucking campaign ads. I've seen ads at this point by almost every single candidate. And one of Hillary's top ads that she likes to run is the, oh, well, I will continue to fight until females get paid the same amount as males, talking to a group of young schoolgirls, I guess in a girls' school or something. It's kind of a gender-segregated classroom or something like that. That's one of the ads that she runs there. That illusion disappears if she drags Bubba out, because Bubba will end up getting the limelight. And as you saw with his response, I think it was about a week or 2 weeks ago, a reporter shortly after, I believe it was the last debate, actually was talking to him saying, it was actually after the Republican debate. Trump had mentioned Bubba's, relatively well-known sexual indiscretions, including those that he admits to and those that he does not admit to. And he began talking about something totally different. He was stuttering. He looked tired. He didn't look like, certainly not the Bubba from the 90s. That Bubba was, he liked his junk food. He was not exactly the healthiest president we've ever had, but he seemed active. He was sharp. He was mentally sharp. He doesn't seem like that quite anymore. But if she drags him out anyway, even if he was, it's just going to steal the limelight, and it actually steals the thunder of her whole, I don't need a man, I'm 100% estrogen, I will fight for you. Now, of course, her actual track record on such things is hit and miss. We all remember the leaked tape of her laughing, cracking jokes about getting a child rapist off the hook. He had raped, I think, a 13-year-old girl, and she was laughing about how retarded the case was, how stupid the prosecution was, and how she was basically handed a victory in which, this rapist got off scot-free. So we know it's hit and miss. Sanders got the better of her for most of the debate. He drove the conversation. When they were analyzing what people were looking up shortly thereafter, it was all Goldman Sachs, which Hillary gets money from them. I was surprised. Bernie never once mentioned Ted Cruz. But in a way, it doesn't surprise me, and I'll tell you why. He drove the debate in that direction, aiming it at Hillary. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton are aware that Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. It will not be Ted Cruz. I highly doubt he will even win Iowa at this point. I expect that when the next aggregate comes out, Cruz's numbers will be sub 17. That is a couple points below nationally. He'll have lost a few points in Iowa. Trump will surge again. That's what I expect. In the wake of the last Republican debate, I expect Trump to surge several points. I expect Cruz to continue sliding back down at an accelerated pace. I believe he will win the first 3 states. He's going to sweep Super Tuesday. At that point, it becomes impossible numerically for any other candidate to actually supplant him, because the amount of a bump he's going to get from cracking the final illusion, which is somebody can challenge him, is going to be most of the GOP. He will be well ahead of Romney when it comes to delegates by the end of Super Tuesday. That's my belief. Clinton also has done the same thing, and I would like to point this out to you. By the last Democratic debate, what had Hillary been saying most of the time before then? These Republicans want this. These Republicans want that. Bush was terrible. Republicans are terrible. What did she then begin saying? What did she start saying with much greater frequency? Donald Trump is terrible. Not just generic, oh, Republicans want to take this from you, Republicans want to screw you this way. No, it was Trump wants to take this from you, Trump wants to screw you that way. She already suspects he's going to be the nominee, and by the way, the Republican field, the smarter Republicans, largely are fixated on Clinton. They realize Bernie is on the rise. He does have a lot of grassroots support. He's a powerful candidate, but he's not going to be the nominee most likely. The funny thing, though, is this. This is what I will say. And I'll get to O'Malley in a minute, because that deserves a discussion. I feel very sorry for O'Malley. They mistreated him completely at the debate. He was arguably the most well-spoken person in the room on the stage. Yeah, there's only 3 people there. It's not like the GOP debates where even after they cut it down, there's 7 or 8 people on the stage. But I'll talk about that in a minute. Bernie Sanders did better than Hillary Clinton did. Hillary basically just waffled around all night. The Republicans have begun fixating on Hillary. They believe she's going to be the nominee. The Democrats have begun fixating on Trump. They believe he's going to be the nominee. I happen to agree. I think it's going to come down to Trump versus Clinton, and in the general election, depending on which way the country goes as far as what's being spoken of, I think it's more likely Trump will win. You may not like that fact. You may dislike Trump deeply. I'm not on board with many of his views. I won't be voting for him. I'll be voting for Gary Johnson. But I expect him to become the next president, all things considered. Scott Adams, who's the cartoonist who does Dilbert, has been analyzing this election in great depth. He is predicting a Trump landslide as well, based on his knowledge of persuasion and mesmerism. I would like to point out this, though. This is an important fact I think people have overlooked, psychologically speaking. I don't get into persuasion and mesmerism. I understand people more in an anthropological perspective, but I also know a bit about political history. I look back and I say, well, Trump's already ahead of where Romney was, and it looks like he may win all 3 of the beginning states as opposed to just 1 like Romney did. That puts him in a pretty strong, striking position and shows that he's not the meme candidate that some people suspected that he was. I think by around last month, though, it became fairly evident that he was going to win based on the fact that there was simply nobody who hadn't already peaked and declined capable of challenging him. Even Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz had peaked before. This latest incline appears to be nothing more than the result of the mainstream GOP realizing Jeb can't do it, Rubio can't do it, Carson, he's less likely to be elected than Trump if he got the nomination anyway. We're not going to go with Carson. Fiorina fucked herself. Who else are we going to turn to? Christie's too weak. He's not even going to win his home state. He's hated in his home state. Who do we turn to? And they looked and they said, well, Cruz is, kind of an evangelocon, kind of a Rick Santorum light. But they had no real other choice. They're more worried about Trump. And I think what they're more worried about is the fact that Trump is not taking their money. And they're worried that he might be unpredictable. He might reign in an imperialistic fashion over much of the GOP because so many people in the GOP have taken his money. Because the GOP relies on a strict delineation between the donor class, those with money who support the GOP and get a kickback when the candidate wins, and those that are actually the candidates that are less wealthy until they get those contributions. Trump is blurring the line. He doesn't need any sort of outside funding. He's not even a grassroots candidate. He's self-funded. He's the only person in the race who is. It's a little bit like a Ralph Nader kind of thing, only he's within the mainstream party. He's not attempting to split the vote. He's saying, I want to be the nominee. Every prediction about Trump has failed, by the way. They said, oh, he'll never run. Oh, he'll never actually file the paperwork. Oh, he'll never crack 5%. Oh, he'll never be in the lead. Oh, he'll never maintain the lead. He'll have dropped out within the first month or two. Every single prediction has been wrong. There's something larger going on. Now, you can isolate it and you can say exactly what it is. Most people in the country are no longer members of either party. Most people now identify very weakly with the Republicans or Democrats. Trump has already moved to the general election. His unwillingness to talk about, terrible gay people, terrible Planned Parenthood or whatever, and largely fixated on economic issues and the border and things like that blur the lines between the partisan struggle between the two parties is only evidence that he's not so much worried about the other Republicans. He's not going to move to the right because he realizes something they don't. This is what Rove and the Bush family and no others within the GOP appear to have realized in a long time. If you move to the right during the primaries in order to win the nomination, then move back to the center when you actually get nominated, your turnout is lower. But you've already created a straw man for the opponent to attack. You've already created a far-right straw man that will get targeted instead of your new centrist approach by the other side. It allows the Democrats to drive up segments of the vote that are very concerned about the possibility of a Republican president, while stymieing your own vote. And sometimes both parties do this. Then you have a close election. Romney and Obama both did this. Clinton is doing it. Clinton has moved substantially to the left. It's obvious she doesn't actually believe most of what she says. Sanders, meanwhile, hasn't moved to the left because he was already far left. Everyone knows he's a democratic socialist. He hasn't changed his stance on many issues. Clinton has been forced to compete with Sanders. Trump realizes all he has to do is stay the course. He's not far right. He's never been against gay marriage. He never cared. He never had a problem with abortion. He doesn't, by the way, have a great deal of a problem with immigrants. What he is fixating on is, of course, border security and illegals that have come over, not legal immigrants. In fact, I have every reason to believe he would increase the number of legal immigrants, specifically because he's smart enough to realize that's what will stymie illegal immigration by opening up more visas. You get people through legal channels, it's a lot easier, it's a hell of a lot cheaper. You put up whatever wall you want to build, and the problem is largely solved. It's a Reaganite approach. Most modern Republicans are so far out there, they don't realize it. Cruz, meanwhile, did move to the right. That's why he was growing in support. He moved to the right to outmaneuver Trump without realizing Trump is just going to verbally smash him in the final debate, which he did, and then he's going to be cornered. He's going to be the next Santorum. I find it funny because many people still analyze the Democratic race and they say Hillary is assured the nomination. And I believe right now she's leading over Sanders by about 10 points. In a field where there are only two viable candidates, let's face it. But let's just look at them all. There are three candidates. It's not a crowded field. It's a very sparse field. She's leading by 10 points, and she's assured the nomination. Trump is leading by 15 points in a race that still involves 11 people, and yet he is doomed, not going to be nominated. He's got a small remote chance, according to people like Nate Silver who analyze these things. I disagree. I think you vastly underestimated him, specifically because the blowhard things he says have appealed to the large segment of the GOP that wants to vote. They don't like the Democrats. They're willing to vote for a Republican, but they want an outsider. As for O'Malley, which I said I would talk about, the mistreatment of Martin O'Malley at the last Democratic debate last night was appalling. I think they asked him 3 questions in a 2-hour period. Most of the time, they didn't even allow him to fully respond, and they went right back to Sanders and Clinton. It's clear at this point the DNC understands that there are 2 people driving the interest in the race, but how is O'Malley supposed to drive his interest up if you're not willing to allow him to speak? There were many times when he wanted to respond. When Clinton and Sanders had gone back and forth for 2 or 3 turns, he wanted to say something on the same topic, which under the debate rules is his right, and they cut to a commercial. And then they do a new question when that's over and still don't let him speak. They did this twice. They did that twice during the debate, and then they ended the debate early, by all rights. Considering how mistreated he was with regards to the questioning, for the first almost 2 hours of the debate, the last 7 minutes that they cut off should have been O'Malley time. They should have just said, and now we turn to Martin O'Malley. We're going to let him speak for 7 solid minutes about whatever the fuck he wants to, because we so far have failed to do so. So far, we have fixated upon the 2 candidates we happen to enjoy, because we think they actually have a chance, while ignoring O'Malley completely. Again, not an O'Malley fan. In fact, I think he was one of the weakest of the 5 that joined. He was more like Chafee. I thought Jim Webb as the third wheel would have made more sense. Because you've got the socialist, you've got the bank centrist turned liberal. Why not have somebody who's like a blue dog Democrat? O'Malley's basically just a Clintonian on a state level, mayor of Baltimore. Whoop-de-fucking-do. But at least let him speak if you're going to have him on the fucking stage. By the way, under the GOP's convention rules, the GOP also had a bunch of fucking problems. Now, the GOP debate had a better overall structure. They didn't cut off a bunch of people. They didn't try to end it early. They didn't do a bunch of that nonsense. They put it on at a more humane time. This was put on literally at the worst possible time because the DNC, run by a former Hillary campaign manager, doesn't want Sanders, who is more well-spoken than Hillary, to have too much influence in the debates. He clearly won, according to most of the people who were watching. In poll after poll, it's Sanders by 60% or more. They didn't want him to get more exposure. But he managed to drive the debate forward. That may give him the edge in Iowa. It's not going to help him in South Carolina, which is oddly enough where the debate was being held, because Clinton it's insurmountable. She's leading by 20 points. In the core of the old school Democrat, Dixiecrat South, Hillary is, ahead by 20, 30 points. She's going to win all those states. In the Midwest, the people who are more evangelical, they don't like the fact that Sanders is, number one, a self-proclaimed socialist. That's not going to fly with him. Number two, he's Jewish. That doesn't help. Clinton, they don't see Clinton as religious, but they see her as, a liberal Christian or whatever. To them, that's better than Jewish individual. And number three, in some cases, especially among younger voters, they are used to the fact that Obama, he's not a white male, he's black. They want Hillary because she's female. That's why. I don't think he'll be nominated. I think it's going to be a Trump versus Clinton race. I would give Trump better than 50-50 odds of winning the election. You may not think so, for reasons that are not yet entirely clear, but will become clear over time. Trump is likely to force Hillary to compete in two areas she does not want to have to compete in. She wants to compete in swing states where she can just browbeat the Republican Party with they want to take away gay rights and women's rights and fuck your children forever. So they have no jobs, no future, dead everywhere, more wars and so forth. If she voted for the Iraq War, people are going to realize that that's going to be a weakness. Because Trump's just going to trot out, well, you're more like Bush than I was, and remember how shitty Bush was. And then he's going to go off and celebrate. But she will force him to compete in the upper Midwest. The union-heavy states, especially white union workers, which are generally more to the left, they generally favor the Democrats, have been known to switch to the Republicans under the right conditions. Trump meets those criteria, I believe. By forcing her to compete in the upper Midwest, she's not going to have enough fucking time or money to compete in the swing states. He'll go there, he'll make a few statements about how much he loves union labor and how powerful it made American industry, and then he'll go off to the swing states and do something else. The other part is New York. His New York values comment was not just calculated to fuck Cruz. It did it probably better than Trump even expected it to. Cruz has been completely KO'd. I don't think he's going to win Iowa. Even though I predicted it a few weeks ago, I said, Cruz still has the edge. He'll probably win. He's like a point ahead. Now Trump has overtaken him anyway. Like literally the next day, I felt stupid for making the prediction because the next day, Trump's back on top in Iowa. Oh, okay. Thanks RCP. You couldn't have updated that a day earlier. Not only did it knock Cruz out, though, it's a segue into the general election. There is a reason why Trump has stubbornly refused to move far right. He did for guns. He was a supporter of the Second Amendment anyway. He did become a little bit stronger on the issue, but he didn't really majorly move his position. He was already fairly conservative on that issue. He has refused to come out and say, I'm going to go after gays. And that's going to take one of the wedge issues out of the Democratic Party if he's nominated. The Democrats won't be able to use, the GOP wants your gay rights, because Trump's not going to make it an issue if they do. You know what he's going to say? You know what Trump would say in a general election if Hillary Clinton were to say the Republicans are against gay rights? He would point to the 90s, back when she was a first lady and he was a tycoon. And he'll say, I didn't have a problem with gay marriage, but you did. Hillary Clinton was against gay marriage when Bubba was president. In fact, she was against it even when she was a state senator. She said, I think marriage is between a man and a woman. Donald Trump supported gay marriage a full decade before Hillary. Imagine what absolute chaos it will sow in the general election when he mentions this fact. And he will. You wait. See if my prediction comes true. If he is nominated, as I believe he will. First, look for him to be nominated. Look for him to win the first 3 states and go on to cripple everyone on Super Tuesday. If that happens and he becomes the nominee and he runs against Hillary, wait until the gay marriage debate is mentioned by the Clinton camp. He won't mention it first. He will wait. And the second that she puts it in an ad, the second that she talks about it, he's going to hammer her in the face with it. The second that she talks about these Republicans want to start a bunch of wars, what's he going to say? Back around the time we went into Iraq, I warned against it. Hillary voted for the war in Iraq. She is going to be made to look like George W. Bush by a Republican on the national stage, somebody who is, fairly, solidly right-wing on fiscal issues, conservative. But Trump is more like a Reaganite or even like an Ike figure for the most part. He's not socially far right. He doesn't care about these issues. This is why he will probably win. Because the Democratic Party, since Obama took office, and even a bit before that, we remember somewhat with John Kerry, the Democratic Party has been primarily aimed towards using wedge issues to carve off small minority groups, conglomerate them, and drive up the votes, especially among the youth within the United States. Especially, and also to retain union support, which is why they've been sweeping the Midwest. The Upper Lake states into Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota to an extent. Indiana, which of course Obama won in 2008. He didn't win it in 2012, but it was a narrow loss. Ohio, that he actually retained against Romney, again by like 1.5 points, but he retained it. Florida, with the Latino vote there. Trump you may find also Florida will go further red, because Cuban Latinos don't like being conflated with Mexicans. Nor do, by the way, Mexicans like being conflated with Latinos from Cuba. They don't like it. You've got to mind specifically what national background people have. It's like assuming that someone's white and you say, oh, you're from Ireland. No, I'm not. I'm from Italy. They're going to get pissed off. People think that it's hegemonic. It just doesn't work, folks. Trump is talking about Central Americans, and that's the other thing he's going to do. You watch. Second he's nominated, what's he going to say? One of the first things he'll say, I said I will keep illegals out. I don't have a problem with legals. By the way, I don't have a fucking problem with Mexicans because most of them are legal immigrants, many of which have been here. They're now like second, third generation Latinos. I was talking about the influx of Hondurans and Guatemalans. That's what he'll say. He'll ingratiate himself to the Mexican immigrants in this country, and it will work because they'll realize, that's right. Never said anything about legal immigrants. He was talking about illegals. And he's going to ram this home. Then he's going to talk about how Hillary was a Goldwater Republican, sort of a fucking deep South Republican in the segregation era or something like that, and sort of stuck with it even after it was the party switched after Nixon's Southern strategy, and she wasn't completely on board, and her husband was just fucking everything that moved. He's going to beat her over the head. So there's my reaction to the Democratic debates. Some more predictions. Watch where Trump takes the national dialogue. He'll let the Clintons open up about gay marriage first, and he'll wait until he's nominated. He's just going to shut up about it before then. He's not going to bring it up in the primaries when he has to still worry about the possibility of losing like Nevada or something, where you've got evangelicals, maybe not, a majority, but you've got a sizable proportion. Once he hits the general, if he does, as I suspect he will, he's going to let Clinton get enough rope to hang herself in the public debate. He's going to let her bring up how the Republicans love war, how the Republicans hate abortion, how the Republicans are so zealous and so religious and hate religious minorities, how the Republicans hate gays. And then he's going to hammer her one after the other until the Democratic wedge issues that her campaign is built on no longer exist. Not going to exist anymore. I wouldn't be surprised. Someone needs to dig in. See what Trump has said in the past regarding gender equality in the workplace. Dig that up because it might become important. Because if he's made statements before, especially from the 90s, about how women work just as well as men or something, he's going to beat her over the head with that too. Because she does underpay her female staffers, of course. That is well known. It became an issue, actually, fairly early on in the campaign. People were saying, oh, well, Hillary, isn't really strong on gender equality. And that's right. And that's going to become a problem. She represents outdated 90s Clintonian policies that have more in common with Bush than, like, Sanders' progressivism. And even if Sanders, by the way, got in there, Trump may oddly enough find himself agreeing with parts of his platform and largely differentiating based on economic issues. There's a reason why Bernie outperforms Clinton facing Trump. And by the way, the gap that Trump supposedly suffers, you'll see that disappear the second he's the nominee. It always does. We've had this before, folks. There were people who claimed, based on this poll and that poll, oh, Romney will perform so much better than Obama. Or, oh, Obama will just blast Romney. You know, he won't win a fucking state. It never came true. Ultimately, it largely evened itself out. It was Romney's own personal failings with his 47% comments and horses and bayonets as well. His weak debating skills. That's really what screwed him. That's about all. Peace out.